Hello and welcome again to Tommy Travers's football predictions. And John White is with me again. So welcome, John. Now we're a little bit tight for time tonight. It's going to be a lot shorter than normal, but we're still going to run through the three matches. And the first match we have that I'm going to do is Ireland against Scotland. And that's here in Lansdowne Road. Ireland are at home. But as always, I think in any of these matches, any team can turn the other team over. And I think everyone knows in Ireland that Scotland are not coming over here for the crack. They're coming over to win this match. And it's going to be a tough, hard match. Now, I am going to go for Ireland, and I just hopefully shade it and win it, and hopefully keep them in the hunt for the championship. So what do you think of that match, John? Ireland against Scotland, please? Would you like to give a prediction or talk first, whatever you want to do?
Yeah, well, I think that, like you say, Scotland are likely to come kind of guns blazing because it's their last chance to leave the tournament with a good result. But I think Ireland, especially in Dublin, is probably going to be far too much for them to handle. So exactly. I would think that I would expect, because Scotland have had quite a lot of disciplinary issues, and their attack has looked good in generating opportunities, but they haven't been able to finish them off a lot of the time. They did look a lot better against Italy, but then everyone generally, unfortunately, looks quite a bit better against Italy. So I would say that I would expect Ireland to win quite handily, because remember that for Ireland to have a chance to win the tournament, obviously they need England to beat France, which we'll talk about in a second, but they need to win by a bonus point. So Ireland need to go out and score at least 4 tries in this game. And I think they're going to try and get that done before half-time, just to give them that cushion. And especially when Ireland need to score points, and Johnny Sexton knows that he needs to generate opportunities for Ireland to score points, they can get very ruthless very quickly. So I would, margin of 15 points easily, I would have thought, for Ireland to win.
Yeah, well, the hits. Well, we all know that. Everyone knows that it's going in on Johnny Sexton. So that's grand. So, John, we go on now to France against England. Now, in this match, I'm going to chance England. Do you know what I mean? Because now France definitely are favourites, and they probably should win it. But I'm going to go for England, and the reason I'm going for England is they did put up a good performance against Ireland after having the man sent off. But I know Ireland still come out and beat them, which is a sign of a good team. But for Ireland to have any chance to win this championship, England has to beat France. So that's sort of some of the reason why I'm doing it as well. So I'm just going anyway for England to shade that match against France. So over to you now, John, on that one. See what you think of that one, France against England.
Well, I am maybe a bit more pessimistic about that, in that I think that while England did put in a really, really good performance, no doubt, there was a much better performance than I expected them to put in, to be honest. And, their activities in the scrum are very well documented, and, they played very, very well, and they played the referee very well. And they also did a very good job of getting their supporters on side very early on to create a very hostile atmosphere there in Twickenham. So whether they can take that energy on the road with them, I am a bit more dubious about that. Can you do that in the Stade de France? France looked a lot more average playing Wales, but it's worth saying they only really created one genuine opportunity to score a try, and they did, and that's all they need. But Wales, are kind of they're kind of quite well placed to tackle the French game, and I don't think that England will be able to replicate that sort of performance against them. So I think France will win, and I think they'll get the Grand Slam. But at least it's the last game of the day, so we get to go in watching it and just looking forward to seeing how that game actually goes. But no, I would expect France to win that by at least 7 points.
Okay. That's that one out of the way. So then we go on, John, to Wales. I think Italy is up, but I'd still fancy Wales, John, to win that match, because last weekend against France, I thought they put up a great show. Okay, they couldn't get through for the try, but they played very well, I thought, especially in the second half, and they had chance after chance after chance. And a few times they were probably a little bit unlucky. So I think against Wales, John, against Italy, I'm going to go for Wales in this one. So it's over to you now, John. See what you think of that.
Yeah, I think in reality, I expect Italy to score as well, but I think Wales will outscore them. And what's quite interesting is this is the only match that, because we're recording this on a Wednesday evening, this is the only match that we have a lineup for, which is in typical fashion. Don't know why. This was something Warren Gatland always used to do, but when Pivac announced his squad on Tuesday, and it features Alan Wynne-Jones, who's getting his 150th cap. Dan Biggar gets his 100th. Wales caps, sorry, it's not including Lions caps. So it's going to be a big event on the day. But what they've also done, which is a bit more interesting, is in the back line, you have Johnny McNichol coming in at 15, who generally likes to play as a second receiver, and Pivac likes to use him as a second receiver, and Ulisi Halaholo coming in at 12, who's also he can distribute, but he's a very good running threat, and he's got quite a nice pass when he wants to as well, like quite a nice offload. So we're definitely going to see a lot more running, attacking rugby. I suppose the question is how long Italy can hold that out, but also how well Wales can actually execute it, because the attacking definitely against France left something to be desired, and for most of the tournament, the attacking has left a lot to be desired. Realistically speaking, I do think Wales will win. I think they probably will get a bonus point out of it. But that said, I mean, Italy scored, I think it was 3 tries against Scotland last week. Definitely no reason they can't come back and do something similar in the Principality.
Yeah, and they are improving a little bit. I know some of the panels on the rugby were, they were saying that they're not great, like, because they're losing so many matches. They haven't won a match now since, I don't know when it is.
I think it's about 35 or 36 Six Nations games in a row they've lost,
And that on, I think it was on Virgin Media One of the guys was saying about bringing in South Africa into this, And then one of the other fellas said, well, get into it. England, Ireland, Wales, none of them is going to win the Grand Slam then, but I don't know. Like, I'd love to see South Africa in it. I think the more competition you have, the better. That's my opinion on that. I don't know what you think of that, John.
No, I disagree.
Right.
I definitely wouldn't bring in South Africa at the expense of Italy. I think that, we brought Italy in 20 odd years ago now, whatever it was, I can't remember. But, it's only really now that their academy system is starting to show through. And it's also, it's going to be a conversation that's going to be going for another 5 or 6 years until Italy start regularly winning matches, which they will at some point. But I just think that if you think if you think you can only bring a team in for 20 years and think that you can overhaul the culture, the sporting culture in that country within that time, then it's just a poor way of viewing investing.
Yeah, well, in actual fact, John, I wouldn't like to see Italy thrown out of it and South Africa in their place. I wouldn't mind to see South Africa coming in, but leave Italy there. I wouldn't throw them out. No, that would be bad because they're never going to get better if you throw them out of the competition. I definitely wouldn't agree. Now, I don't know, maybe I didn't hear all the conversation that was going on in that, John. So maybe that's what they did say, that we're going to replace Italy with South Africa. I don't know about that. But the way I'd look at it is I'd still leave Italy in it and bring South Africa in. Now, I don't know whether that'd work or not. You know, you'd know more about that than me.
Well, there's definitely plans there's been discussions about bringing South Africa in now. I think that has changed because they recently renewed their SANZA membership, which would be what used to be the Tri-Nations in the Southern Hemisphere, but it's now the Rugby Championship. Australia, Argentina, South Africa, and New Zealand. Now, the reality is that if South Africa were to play in the Six Nations, they would be leaving that tournament, and that would make that tournament considerably weaker. And it would probably be a step towards a closer, sort of more integrated global calendar. Now, the South African club teams are already playing in the URC with the Irish teams, the Welsh teams, the Scottish, the Italian. They are going to be in the European Champions and Challenge Cups next season. They are aligning more closely with the European schedule. Whether or not that means that they will ultimately join the Six Nations is another matter entirely. People don't like change when it comes to the Six Nations. But like, if they were going to come in, you would definitely want to see it move to 7 rather than 6, and them getting rid of Italy. But that said, you're not just adding one more international game into the rota, you're adding an international game with South Africa, which is going to be incredibly physically brutal.
Absolutely.
Could be good for the competition, potentially. I can't see the travelling support being particularly strong for those matches. If they were going to Johannesburg or Pretoria or wherever. But that said, you know, it might be unavoidable. It might be unavoidable once their club sides are playing in a unified. Once their club sides are over properly playing in Europe fully.
Yeah. The other thing, John, now this is work at all or not. Everyone probably think I'm mad for saying this altogether. I don't know if I mentioned it to you or not before. I did mention it to someone. I don't know if it was you or not. I'd love to see, now I know they're the other side of the world, Japan in it, for the way that the open rugby that they played in the World Cup. Like, I thought they were terrific, and I think all the audience and all really took to them. Do you know what I mean? Now, I know it'd be fierce, do you know what I mean, logistics, money-wise, for to get them over here and all. Like, they'd have to come over. Do you know the distance and all? Like, all the other countries here were all beside one another, really. Now, if you're to bring Japan into it, I don't know how it would work. Or what would you think of that, John? Is that completely off the wall, maybe?
I don't think I would go that far. Just, I mean, literally, if you're going to get traveling fans going to Japan and Japanese fans traveling over here, it's incredibly expensive for people to do that. And it's incredibly expensive for the teams to be able to send their players over there as well. And now, you know, it's their path is surely joining SANZA to join that competition. You know, the Rugby Championship with Australia and New Zealand, and you know. But then, obviously, if you have Argentina and South Africa involved in that, it becomes another logistical issue because you're talking about getting from Japan to Argentina to South Africa to New Zealand. You know, you're circumnavigating the globe at that point. So there are issues. One of them definitely being Japan isn't massively geographically close to another rugby playing nation or group of nations outside of maybe Pacific Islands. But then,
Yeah.
you know, they're also closer to Australia than that. So it is a big issue. I don't think we need Japan or South Africa in the Six Nations necessarily, because I think there are other countries in Europe that would benefit from being moved into the contest. Like, for example, if we were talking about expanding to 7, I would much rather see Georgia move in than South Africa. Like, just, you know, South Africa don't need the Six Nations, but other teams could use it to really improve the popularity of the sport, the viewership, and the quality of their team.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so John, seeing that we're a bit tight for time, we're going to wrap it there. Thanks a million, John, as always, for coming in with all your expert views and all. And we're going to wrap it there now.
All right. Cheers, Tommy. Thanks for having me on.
Bye to everyone.